flower in my hair.
Well, Happy New Year, everyone. And I know we're not seeing some of you tonight, but hope you'll be watching the video. So as we begin, let's begin this new year with a word of prayer. Let's pray together. Dear God, we give you thanks for getting us through the Christmas season. God, it was a challenge in many ways for many of us, but here we are in the new year, and we're prepared to continue our Bible study from where it was last year. We invite you to be in our midst, God, and you teach us through these very ancient stories. We ask that you open up to us your heart. Touch our hearts, touch our minds. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. I'm looking through. My internet has not been very good, but I hope you're all hearing me okay. Because everybody seems to be freezing on mine, so I'm wondering if I'm frozen for you.
No.
Okay, good.
It froze once, but I think it was ours. Our computer.
Okay.
That was.
So anybody, since did somebody just watch this? Remind us where we are. I think
Kathy, and then she ditched us.
Yeah.
Well, and I just mentioned in our time before that we talked last time about Abraham and Sarah and having the promise of generations to come.
Right.
Yeah. We
did finish chapter 17 last time, so we're in chapter 18, and it's going to get wild. These next couple of weeks are going to be a good, solid R-rated, if not close to X, as we start talking about some of the stuff that are.
Let's take notes on that.
Yeah, but here we go. So we are in chapter 18, and I would like to go through just the first 8 verses. Chapter 18 in Genesis.
Okay,
thanks.
I can do it. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre, while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed low to the ground. He said, I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord. Do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me go get you something to eat so that you can be refreshed and then go on your way, now that you have come to your servant. Very well, they answered. Do as you say. So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah. Quick, he said, get these 3 shave with fine flour and knead it and bake some bread. Then he ran to the herd and selected a choice, tender calf and gave it to the servant, who hurried to prepare it. Then he brought some curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared, and they set these before them. While they ate, he stood near them under a tree.
Okay. So how long did it take to prepare this meal, this little snack that was set before them?
Cook the meat, so after they killed the meat, it took a while.
You had to bake the bread.
Yeah, we're talking half a day at least. I mean, they had to kill the calf, they had to prepare the calf, they had to cook the calf, they had to bake the bread. We're talking 5-6 hours here. All right, so who were these people? Don't read ahead. Who were these 3 men? And why would they prepare such an elaborate meal for these strangers that are coming through?
I think they were the wise men, and they just got lost on their way to Bethlehem.
A little time out of sync there. This is like 2,000 years before that, but Okay, anybody got any idea what's going on here? This little snack, yeah, it's this big elaborate meal. So what's going on?
They must have been, well, he thinks they're just passing by. But why would he go out of his way to prepare a meal and know something about them? Like they're special.
Okay, I'm going to tell you a little story. So when I first was married, or Justin, I was getting to know David's family. Whenever we'd visit, and I'd just come in and he wanted to introduce me to everybody, and we'd sit down in the living room, and before I knew it, there would be a tray set out before me covered with all kinds of food. During my engaged time, I think I gained about 15 pounds because there was always food, whichever house we would go into. Boom, off they'd run to the kitchen, and there would be coffee or tea and cake and breads and snacks. It wasn't just like, would you like a cup of coffee? Would you like a cup of coffee? Sure. And then we put on 4,000 things because that was the culture.
Mhm.
Now, how many of you have been in a culture where that kind of hospitality is just expected, or know people that are in a culture like that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So when we look at this, we're thinking this is something special. No, this is the nomadic culture. A stranger comes through, no matter who it is, and you show them this radical hospitality. So they could have been Joe Schmo, 3 Joe Schmoes coming through here, just happened to walk through, and Abraham has to prove what a great chieftain he is. So they're not anybody special yet. This is what they do to anybody who's traveling through. Invite them into their house. That is an expected part of the hospitality of this culture. Hospitality above all things is very important. So I'm going to take a little trip 2,000 years in advance. Since we just got through learning about the Christmas story and Mary and Joseph and staying in the inn, and there was no room in the inn, so they got kicked out to the barn. Well, that cannot be the correct interpretation.
Right.
Because that hospitality was so much part of the culture that there was no such thing as an inn. You would go and someone would take you in. And they always have a guest room, so there was no guest room. So the houses were built usually with 2 floors, so you lived on the 2nd floor, and the animals would be down on the 1st floor, and they would keep you warm. So they put Mary and Joseph in a very choice place in where the animals were, and maybe they took the animals out. But it wasn't this whole thing, you go back into the back lot because we don't have room for you. That would have been such an egregious, terrible thing to do, to send visitors out someplace else. You would keep them in. So anyways, going back to Abraham. So that's what's going on. That's expected. You got to show your hospitality. So let's see what happens now. Maybe we can figure out who these 3 people are. Did you read the first verse though? Did you look at it before we go on?
The Lord
The
appeared.
Lord appeared to Abraham.
Ooh. So we got that little bump there. The Lord appeared. This is not, but to Abraham doesn't know yet. It's just 3 men. All right, so let's go 9 through 15.
I can do it.
Thank you.
Where's your wife, Sarah? Sarah, they asked him. There in the tent, he said. Then the Lord said, I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son. Now Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already old and well advanced in years, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, after I am worn out, my master is old. Will I now have this pleasure? Then the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, will I really have a child now that I'm old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son. Sarah was afraid, so she lied and said, I did not laugh. But he said, yes, you did laugh.
Okay. So now we're getting a little inkling of who this person is, who the three. So we've got one, the Lord. Got any idea who the other two guys are?
Well,
We'll
I've
keep
always thought they were angels.
You're saying that the Lord was one of the three visitors, you're saying.
Yeah. This is what it's saying there. The Lord was there. We don't know who the other two yet. We got somebody thinking that it might be an angel. So, but we have this whole thing with Sarah. Was Sarah eavesdropping?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Of course,
Yeah.
a tent. How easy is it for you to overhear something with the walls of a tent?
But I think also she was in the culture. She was, of course, not invited to interact with men, but she was waiting in case they needed something. She had to be in earshot. Kind of like, if we look at Downton Abbey, that the servants are always right there. They kind of become invisible, but they have to be listening. If that bell rings, they have to be able to come right out. So Sarah isn't technically eavesdropping. She's standing there in case they're eating and they need something. But because you notice when the guys came, what did Abraham do as soon as they came? He went and ran and got Sarah and said, Sarah, start cooking. So she's there. So she hears this. Now there's something different. Now, Abraham has been hearing that he's going to have a son. 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 What's different about this one?
Given a
Sarah,
time
no.
frame.
But he has actual time frame.
That actual time. They
But
said,
did Sarah know that this was a promise? Did she know? Or
what do you think?
I don't know. I mean, she laughed, but did she laugh every time Abraham said, yeah, you know what? God says we're going to have I don't know.
I
The
don't
fact
know.
that
Is
she
she not-
laughed.
it never tells us. But let's put ourselves in this culture where women have very little voice. And
It doesn't seem like she would know because she reacts as if that's the first time she's hearing this, and laughs and says, how can that happen at my age? Unless that promise was made before she was past childbearing age.
Yeah, she might have heard it and thought that he had kind of given up on God, just like Abraham did.
too old. Okay. Well,
So-
we know that Sarah knew because I'm going to go back. Because how did Ishmael come about?
Well, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. All right, you're right, Molly. You're right.
I'm too old. So why don't you take Hagar? That's going to be the child of the promise, and I
Hagar.
can take it as my own. So she knew. She had heard before, but years had passed because Ishmael is now 13. So since that time she'd had the promise, 13 years had gone by.
Okay.
So that biological clock, the alarm rang a long time ago and it was shut off. The clock's not going anymore. Another story, when I was in Honduras on a mission trip, I had a little bit of Spanish. So I got the job of passing out the worm medicine. And because everybody was going in to get, they all had to get this worm medicine because it made everybody feel better. So I had to ask questions. I had to ask them if they ate breakfast, what they had for breakfast, and then I had to ask if they were pregnant. And so I would make a great joke. I would see these young strapping men coming up and I'd say, and are you pregnant? And it would get a huge laugh. And the other one, when I'd see a woman who was really obviously too old to have children, I'd ask if she was pregnant and it would make a big laugh for everybody. And then I had a good time doing that. So Sarah was one of those that it would have been a good laugh And she did. So maybe 13 years ago, maybe she believed it might have, but she'd already given up 13 years ago to give, I mean, to give your husband another woman to have a child, that's pretty much giving up on your chances. And now 13 years have gone by. So Sarah knows this is not just your ordinary guy coming through, wandering through, and happens to fall into your camp. This is somebody really important. So now we've got a great, this is the most interesting passage, I think, one of the whole times in the Bible. I want to read 16 through 21.
You said you were going to read it?
If someone would read it, please. Read from 16 to 21.
I'll read it.
Okay, thank you.
Then the men rose up from there and looked down toward Sodom. And Abraham was walking with them to send them off. And the Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? Since Abraham will surely become a great and mighty nation, and in him all the nations of the earth will be blessed. For I have chosen him in order that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, in order that the Lord may bring upon Abraham what he has spoken about him." And the Lord said, "The outcry of Sodom and Gomorrah is indeed great, and their sin is exceedingly grave. I will go down now and see if they have done entirely according to its outcry, which has come to me, and if not, I will know."
Okay.
Then,
Oh, stop. So we hear God's thought process. This is God's soliloquy. So the Lord is talking to himself, saying, should I let Abraham know what's going down? And why did God decide to tell Abraham what God was planning to do?
they're particularly close, those two.
Well,
Well, he's been telling him all along what he's going to do.
He's going to become a great and powerful nation, and all nations on earth will be blessed through him.
He's been
yeah, but
telling him.
something that's only affecting him, Abraham. It's about him. This is about something that's totally separate from Abraham.
Would he have wanted to see his reaction, and as a great leader, how he would have maybe chose to handle it? And
Okay.
plus he had family there.
Yeah, he had family there. Lot was living there. Yeah. See what Abraham would do. He's beginning, he's entrusting Abraham, because Abraham is going to be the one that is the chosen one to lead the whole world, to be the keeper of the faith. And Carol will say us, what was, if the Hebrew people were the chosen people, what were they chosen for?
Responsibility,
They're chosen for responsibility, not privilege.
not privilege.
So if they've got this responsibility to be the keepers of the word of God to the world, God wants to bring Abraham into his inner circle and say, okay, God, Abraham, this is what we're going to do. And you need to know the decisions, because it's going to affect you. You need to understand the whole mindset of how God is thinking, because this is going to affect how you relate to the rest of the world. So I'm letting you into my thought process and what's going on. Isn't that pretty amazing? that God would entrust a human being. All right, so there,
Okay.
so God's gonna tell Abraham what's gonna happen. So now we gotta read from let's
22.
go. This is gonna go through end of the chapter. This is gonna go through the end of the chapter. So 22 through 33.
I can do that. The men turned away and went toward Sodom, but Abraham remained standing before the Lord. Then Abraham approached him and said, "Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Would you really sweep it away and not spare place for the sake of the 50 righteous people in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, treating the righteous and the wicked alike. Far be it from you. Will not the judge of all the earth do right?" The Lord said, "If I find 50 righteous people in the city of Sodom, I will spare the whole place for their sake." And Abraham spoke up again. "Now that I've been so bold as to speak to the Lord, though I am nothing but dust and ashes, what if the number of the righteous is 5 less than 50? Will you destroy the whole city for a lack of 5 people? If I find 45 there," he said, "I will not destroy it." Once again, he spoke to him. "What if only 40 are found there?" He said, "For the sake of 40, I will not do it." Then again, he said, "May the Lord not be angry, but let me speak. What if only 30 can be found there?" And he answered, "I will not do it if I find 30 there." Abraham said, "Now that I have been so bold as to speak to the Lord, what if only 20 can be found there?" And he said, "For the sake of 20, I will not destroy it." Then he said, "May the Lord not be angry, but let me speak just once more. What if only 10 can be found there?" And he answered, "For the sake of 10, I will not destroy it." When the Lord had finished speaking with Abraham, he left, and Abraham returned home. It's pretty bold.
Okay. So first of all, let's go back. Why is God going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? Look back at 21. Or 20 and 21.
Their sins are great and grievous.
Okay.
That's what mine says.
So do we see God destroying anything or other than or before this?
Flood.
The flood. We've got the flood. Got any other time where God has intervened and has sent people their various ways?
The Garden of Eden.
Garden of Eden. They got cast out of the Garden of Eden. There's one more time where there was a big event that God said, "Nope, you're not going to do that." We've already read about it in Genesis.
That last
That
year.
was last year. That's exactly what I was going to say.
It has to do with languages.
Oh, that's right. Tower of
Our-
Babel.
Tower of Babel.
Okay.
Okay, so what we're learning, so Abraham is learning about God. He's learning the nature of God's heart. That with this whole conversation, Abraham learns that God is merciful. But Abraham also learns that God will not be mocked. And if this Sodom and Gomorrah are doing such terrible things and justice issues are there and they're harming so many people, God is going to say, "I'm not going to put up with it. I'm merciful, but there's a limit." So do you think God planned this whole conversation with Abraham just to kind of test him, to see what his heart was, to see if Abraham had the mercy?
Or to show him what mercy looked like.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Because Abraham's going, "You're going to destroy the whole city?" So we get a little inkling of what Abraham's heart is too. Because if Sodom and Gomorrah are as bad as we hear about, Abraham's got to hear about how terrible they treat everybody else. but he still has this heart of mercy. So why did Abraham stop at 10?
He was pressing his luck.
Well, it was the end of the chapter.
Yeah, the next one, we go down to 5, 4. You got to read on.
Yeah, why didn't he go down to 1? What if there's 1?
Well, what if it wasn't Lot? What if Lot wasn't
Doesn't Lot, yeah.
that one? Then he'd lose his nephew.
But
Maybe-
I love this. I love this whole conversation with God. I love this, that Abraham is just being bold and discussing with God. And I've used this scripture to talk to churches and say, okay, if God is going to go and is going to destroy churches that aren't doing any good, what are we doing as a church that is so valuable that Abraham would be here saying, but what about this and this and this that's going on in the church? What are we doing that's so good that God would say, all right, I won't destroy it for the sake of that ministry? And I think that's a great way to look at our ministry, to say, why shouldn't God destroy us? What are we doing that's so valuable? And I think that's a good, I've used that, but that's just a great whole passage. But okay, so Abraham, who is Abraham talking to in this?
The Lord.
The Lord.
What
What
is it? One of those three is
One of the
or
three.
have they gone on?
Yeah, it said that so the men turned and went towards Sodom. Abraham drew and said, will you destroy the righteous with the wicked? But we have the two. Abraham just talking with the one person, so 2 of them have already headed off to Sodom and Gomorrah. They're on their way. So these
And
2
we
men,
don't know who they are. We didn't determine who the other 2 are yet.
no, we haven't.
We will find out.
Right,
Okay.
next verse.
Yeah.
Father, Son,
We've
and
got,
Holy
we've
Ghost.
got we've got this thing going on. These 3 men come. They give Abraham an actual time frame when the baby's going to be born. Sarah is called out for not trusting. But does that mean that she got kicked out of the program because she didn't have good faith?
Nope.
Nope. So just another lesson for us: when we falter, it's not about our faith, it's about God choosing us. And then we have the 3 men that come. We learn about the radical hospitality. That's really important to remember, the radical hospitality of this culture, that it would be a grievous sin to turn someone away and not give them hospitality. And then we have God sharing God's own heart with Abraham. And then Abraham bargaining God down, or at least understanding the heart of God. So here we are, we're in 19. So let's read 19. This is where it gets really wild. We're told lots, there's so much wildness in the story of Genesis. So I'm going to read 1 through 11. And there's no big names.
That's what we're all looking for.
I'll take it. That evening, the 2 angels came to the entrance of the city of Sodom. Lot was sitting there, so we know they were angels, by the way. Lot was sitting there, and when he saw them, he stood up to meet them. Then he welcomed them and bowed with his face to the ground. My lords, he said, come to my home to wash your feet and be my guests for the night. You may then get up early in the morning and be on your way again. Oh no, they replied, we'll just spend the night out here in the city square. But Lot insisted, so at last they went home with him. Lot prepared a feast for them, complete with fresh bread made without yeast, and they ate. But before they retired for the night, all the men of Sodom, young and old, came from all over the city and surrounded the house. They shouted to Lot, where are the men who came to spend the night with you? Bring them out to us so we can have sex with them. So Lot stepped outside to talk to them, shutting the door behind him. Please, my brothers, he begged, don't do such a wicked thing. Look, I have 2 virgin daughters. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do with them as you wish. But please leave these men alone, for they are my guests and are under my protection." "Stand back," they shouted. "This fellow came to town as an outsider, and now he's acting like our judge. We'll treat you far worse than those other men." And they lunged toward Lot to break down the door. But the 2 angels reached out, pulled Lot into the house, and bolted the door. Then they blinded all the men, young and old, who were at the door of the house. So they gave up trying to get inside.
Woof. Woof. This is a rough chapter. It's a rough, rough story. So, why would Lot not let the men in the village? Why would he even offer his daughters up rather than let the men in the village have these 2 men, attack these 2 men?
Good question.
Well, they had come under the protection of his roof.
The quality thing. That's how deep it is. The hospitality was so deep in that culture that to harm someone that's under your roof, but to send out your daughters, whew,
Of course, they were under his roof too.
yeah. But they were the hospitality, that taking care of strangers. You give up everything in your house for the stranger. You give them your bed. You give them all the best of your house. You give them everything good. That's part of the culture. All right, so we got that. What was the sin? Roaming around again. Okay, what was the sin that was so grievous in Sodom?
There's the question.
Now we get the word sodomy from this city, from this event. But that's not necessarily a clue as to what was going on. I'm just giving you that. This is the what? What was the sin that was so great? And I'll say it. Was it the sin of homosexuality, or was it something different?
How do we know?
Well, look at the verses. Look at it.
Well, they definitely preferred the men over the daughters.
Possibly.
Oh, this fellow came here as a foreigner and now he wants to play the judge. Is that a clue?
Could be. He's an
Now, I'm
outsider.
expecting you to have some answers now.
I want you to struggle with this a little bit, because this is really, really important.
Yep.
That we figure this out.
Yep.
And if I tell you, you won't remember. If you figure it out, you'll remember.
Well, I mean, I think even if it was the homosexuality, it was the fact that they had no morals about it. I mean, you just don't take somebody, so to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole city was that way. They just came and expected it was going to happen without question.
Okay, so let me ask. This is really intense, and this is why I said this is not a study for children. What is? We're going to talk about rape. Is rape a sexual sin?
No,
Is it
right?
about sex?
It's about power.
It's about power. It's about violence. It really has nothing to do with sex. It's an act of sex, but it's about power. It's about control. It's a violent act against someone. So we're talking rape here. These men the men of the city wanted to rape these two strangers that came in. So it truly wasn't about this homosexual act that was the sin. It was the sin of saying, you're an outsider and we're going to show you we are powerful. And we're going to show you. We're going to use you. We're going to abuse you. See, the daughters weren't the target because they would be freely given to them. It's they want these men that have come into the city and they are outsiders and we are going to show them our power. And they have no rights. They have no value because they don't belong here. We're going to show them how.
It wouldn't have been a homosexual relationship. I mean, if you think of people that are homosexual, there's a relationship. It's a love type thing versus the rape or whatever they were going to do to the men. There was no real relationship. It was just the violent act.
It was a violent power act. It had nothing to do with, you think if women had come in and visited the city, if they were visiting, if they were outsiders, if they would have done the same thing to the women? Maybe. Because it wasn't about a sexual loving relationship. It had nothing to do with that. It was all about power and violence. And so if we use that to judge people who are homosexual and say, well, God judged Sodom because they were homosexual. No. God judged Sodom because they were violent and they stripped the value from people. It wasn't about, I mean, it was a sexual act, but just as much as a rape is nothing to do with sexuality, it's about power and control. This is what it is. This is what was happening here. And I think we tend to take that. I don't know but when people are judging homosexuals who are in a loving, committed relationship with Sodom, these two don't even commute. They're not even close to the same things any more than saying a heterosexual marriage is right. Or saying that you can't marry a woman because someone was raping a woman. And so that's bad. If you say that sex between man and woman is bad because they were raping women. No, they're not the same thing. Am I making it clear?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the loving relationship versus an act of whatever.
An act of violence and power. Yeah. It's like we hear about the Vikings or in any war. Well, let me go right now, currently going on in our world in Haiti, the gang violence that is there. One of the biggest things that these gangs are doing is they're raping. There's a huge amount of rapes going on in Haiti because these gangs are just showing their power. It doesn't mean that sex between men and women are wrong. It means that rape is wrong. So I think if we look at that, do you have any comments or help make that clear to anybody who might be listening to this later on? Comment, help me with this.
It's not just Haiti. I think that stuff is going on in the Ukraine also with the Russians. They're raping men and women.
Right, men and women.
Yeah.
So it's not about the holy act of a loving sexual procreation, sexual relationship. It's about violence and hatred and power, and we can't put the two things in the same basket. All right, so we got this. Yeah.
It's like you said before, if the guests had been women, then they probably the same thing they wanted to do, except they would have been wanting to rape the women.
Hmm.
That thing of the hospitality and guests in the house, and that was the big thing, was to, you know, be violent to his guests, whether they were men or women or whatever.
And maybe even showing Lot, you don't belong here. You're not one of us. And we show you we're going to attack and rape your guests because we can, because we have that power, because we can do it, and it doesn't matter because you have no value. You are not a human being. We don't have any value in you or your guests. Also shows the value of women, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That he's willing to send out his 2 daughters to protect these 2 men. It shows the culture. It shows an awful lot, and it shows the evilness that's going on in the city. All right, let's go on. Let's go. We left the men gaping at the door that they can't. The angels blinded them. So let's go on. 12 through 23.
I can keep reading if you want.
Thanks, Mary.
Meanwhile, the angels questioned Lot, "Do you have any other relatives here in the city?" They asked, "Get them out of this place, your sons-in-law, sons, daughters, or anyone else, for we are about to destroy the city completely. The outcry against this place is so great it has reached the Lord, and he has sent us to destroy it." So Lot rushed out to tell his daughter's fiancés, "Quick, get out of the city, the Lord is about to destroy it." But the young man thought he was only joking. At dawn the next morning, the angels became insistent. "Hurry," they said to Lot, "take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here. Get out right now, or you will be swept away in the destruction of the city." When Lot still hesitated, the angels seized his hand and the hands of his wife and 2 daughters and rushed them to safety outside the city, for the Lord was merciful. When they were safely out of the city, one of the angels ordered, "Run for your lives and don't look back or stop anywhere in the valley. Escape to the mountains, or you will be swept away." "Oh no, my lord," Lot begged. "You have been so gracious to me and saved my life, and you have shown such great kindness, but I cannot go to the mountains. Disaster would catch up to me there, and I would soon die. See, there is a small village nearby. Please let me go there instead. Don't you see how small it is? Then my life will be saved." "All right," the angel said, "I will grant your request. I will not destroy the little village, but hurry, escape to it. I can do nothing until you arrive there." Lot reached the village just as the sun was rising over the horizon.
Okay. All right. So what happens now? Does Lot freely and willingly go, "Oh, yep, I am ready to go. Let's go"?
No, he does not. He's still trying to control.
He's going, think about him. He's going, "But we have a really nice house here. Let me get my photo albums. Let me grab grandma's Afghan. Wait just a minute. I got a couple other things.
Let me get my 126 Christmas cookies before the fire department gets here.
He just going, wait a minute. Do you think God ever kind of pushes our hand and says, "Okay, you're not going willingly, but I got to do something"? And I mean, we have choices, but does God sometimes really push us away and make things happen that kind of forces us into a corner for good?
Definitely.
Yeah. Sometimes things happen and we can't see it at the time, but I mean, these angels did the best they could. The son-in-laws didn't want any part of it. The daughter's husbands, they flat out said no. But ready to go, and the wife and the daughters. And now think about this. Your life has just been saved. You just realize it. And the person that's saving your life tells you to do something, and you say, "Oh, can't do that."
But now the angels didn't talk to the sons-in-law. Talked to Lot, and Lot told the sons-in-law.
Yeah.
So maybe there was no respect for their father-in-law. I mean, they thought he was joking. They didn't believe him. So it wasn't God that they were saying no to. They were saying it to their father-in-law, who they thought was joking. But then Lot again, he said, "Well, I don't want to go to the mountains. I want to just go to this little town." But the sons-in-law might not be as guilty as Lot trying to negotiate.
But don't people come and say, I have a message from God. God has told me, and I'm not talking about the people that are saying it all the time who don't have, but I mean someone that really is saying, I am reading this in the Bible and I know it's true, and people will just laugh at you. Okay, so let's look at the current crisis in Western New York. It's actually touched the nation.
Oh,
Okay. Go ahead, Nancy.
you're talking about Hamlin,
Yeah.
the football player that had a cardiac arrest.
Okay, you've heard about that, Carol?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't know details, but I kind of know what's
Okay.
going on.
He did a tackle, and the guy's helmet hit his chest, and apparently they don't quite know yet what caused, but he had a cardiac arrest, and he virtually died on the field, and they had to resuscitate him. And it's amazing how much talk we're hearing about prayer right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I just listened just before I got on here. They were interviewing Josh Allen and he said, "I believe in prayer." And the guys came over. I invite everybody over to my house, and I said, and we prayed. I invited them over to pray.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty clear, and the players on the field were praying, and there's been more talk about prayer. But before this incident, I think that's going to open prayer to a lot of people, to see these football players and they're praying and talking openly about how they prayed for this guy, and thinking about putting a sign out in front of the church that says, "Prayer works for football players. Come on in. It can work for you too." But it's, and before this incident, prayer is kind of that eye-rolling thing. If you're praying for anybody, and it's like, "Oh yeah, go ahead, you can pray."
Well, it's been mocked when there's a disaster or something and someone says, we're sending our thoughts and prayers. Well, you need to send more than prayers. You need to do something practical. I mean, that it's been mocked just openly in this country for quite a while. And weren't they praying on the news, national news? I think I read that somebody was praying on the news.
One of the, Dan, you might know better than I do. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
One of the announcers, I think, in the booth openly was praying,
Yeah.
is what I heard, I believe.
People weren't apologizing for praying. There was a comment made, there's been controversy in recent years about like at high school football games and stuff, and I think it went to court where they allowed the coach and the team pray on the football field, and I think some places they banned it. And somebody came out and said they haven't heard a single comment at all about how many people were out in the middle of that football field praying, and nobody's said, well, you can't do that, which is pretty amazing. I'm sure there's people out that are thinking this, what's the big deal? But it's absolutely amazing. And the coach McDermott on that interview was openly said he was a Christian, and they've said, that they believe in God and they believe in prayer, and nobody's questioning him or saying you can't do that.
Now, a former resident of Randolph that doesn't live here now said on Facebook posted, "Phew, the demands for prayer are really out of hand these days. Y'all go ahead and pray for people if you want. I won't stop you, but like, don't tell me how to live my life." Very upset about the fact that all this prayer stuff's going on.
That's the first negative one I've seen.
I know, that was my yeah.
Yeah, but it's absolutely and
But this is something that's
it's amazing how it set priorities when it came right down to it. What was the real these guys that's their livelihood and their job, and it can affect games and playoffs and bonuses. Some of these players that are now going to miss, they cancel the game. There's a couple players that they get in their contract. They get bonuses if they have so many sacks or tackles or whatever. There's a couple players that are real close, and now with only instead of 2 games they have 1. They might miss out on millions of dollars in bonuses, and I don't think any of them complained about it.
yeah, it's amazing. But see, this took the nation's heart to watch this guy collapse and die on the field. I mean, and be brought back. But before that, thinking about all this, don't pray before a football game, don't pray, don't do that. Because this is the son-in-laws that are going, that's just ridiculous. They're not going to destroy the city. Nothing bad is going to happen. Well, they made a choice. And they're gone. So now the angel grabs them, they're saved, and now Lot bargains with the angels. Please don't make it quite that hard. I don't think I can do that. And what do we see?
Mercy.
God's mercy again, saying, okay. All right. We can go to this little place. We'll leave that because it looks like they're going to wipe out the whole valley. But I'll leave this little town will leave untouched. Okay. Quite a story. Chapter just so we can hear it. We'll just finish the chapter. We got 24 to 29.
24 to 29?
Yep.
Okay, I'll do that. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, destroying all those living in the cities and also the vegetation in the land. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and returned to the place where he had stood before the Lord. He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, toward all the land of the plain. He saw dense smoke rising from the land, like smoke from a furnace. So when God destroyed the cities of the plain, he remembered Abraham, and he brought Lot out of the catastrophe that overthrew the cities where Lot had lived. Do you want me to go on? Or no, stop there.
That's the end of the chapter, isn't it? Where am I?
I've got more, but it's
Yeah,
another story.
It's another story. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
right. We want to stop there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Next stories gets even wilder. Okay. So they left, and God forced them out. I mean, the angels dragged them out. Now you see, we still have choices. Lot and the daughters went with the angels, and what did the wife do?
Look back.
Look back.
She took matters in her own hands, and it never turns out well.
She just wasn't, she did not want to leave. She wanted to stay this corrupt, evil place. And we haven't heard about Lot's wife before. Do you think she was a resident of Sodom? That he met her there? We don't hear anything about her before. She did not want to go. He said, nope, I'm looking back. I'm going. She made a choice. So God pushes us, but we still have choices in the midst. We can choose to follow God or we can choose not to.
This story's kind of scary because, you know, my curiosity would be killing me. What's going on behind me? I wonder if I can see it in the side of my glasses, you know, without turning around.
Yep, just a little peek.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm not thinking that she wanted to go back. Maybe she did, but my thought is she just wants to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, see if it is actually going to happen.
Yeah, she was told.
So,
What, Dan?
go ahead, Dan. Say it again.
Oh, she just didn't trust what she'd been told.
And
Yeah, and Abraham went out and told his family the story. I mean, he did. From when you read it, it sounds like he must have said, "This is what's really going to happen," and it's bad stuff. And then they laughed at him. It wasn't like he said, "Well, just run quick. Something's going to happen." I think he told them what he believed. You know, he believed something was going to happen.
Yeah. I think it was more than just going, whoa. Because if fire and brimstone are raining down, you're going to see it in your peripheral vision. You're not going to run towards it. You're not going to turn around and watch. I think it was more a matter of the heart of her turning back. Turned around, goes no.
And she didn't respect Lot any more than the rest of them did, maybe.
Yeah. Off you go. And the daughters were adults. The daughters didn't turn around. The daughters went. They were adults. If they had fiancés, they were not children. So that ends the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. What do you take away from this? The whole thing. We've got these angels, 2 angels, and God Himself visiting Abraham, bringing the timeline to come for the birth of Isaac. Then we have God saying, trusting Abraham with this knowledge of what's going to happen, and then being in a conversation with him. And then we have the angels rescuing Lot and finding out the real nature of the city that is just evil to the core, has no respect for any other person. And then we see God saying, not even 10 people in that city. Not even 10. If this is a huge city, could you imagine somebody even going to a little town like Randolph and saying, what if you find 50 good people in Randolph? And Randolph's a little town. Could you imagine what this town would be like if there weren't even 10 people who cared about anybody else than themselves? Could you imagine how awful that place would be?
And yet Lot stayed there.
Yeah. You get in situations, sometimes you don't know how bad it is, so you get out of
it. When Lot first went there, he went there and he picked to go to the area because he thought it was a great place. And at some point, the people in town knew that he was a foreigner, he was an alien.
Yeah.
So
remember, before this, Lot was kidnapped. He had to go save him. When he went back to Sodom and lived there, he was in the midst of it. And now we have one more story of Lot, and then what do we hear about him? Nothing. Nothing. Don't hear anything. We got this next story we'll read next week, which is wild. Okay, it's getting time to wind down. We've got through 1.5 chapters of really difficult stuff. We have okay, I'm going to turn the recording off.